أرحب معكم في الجلسة الثانية بالسبيكرز sorry for running a little bit behind the schedule. We should be finishing by 11:50 or 11:55 and there will be time for Q&As. معايا الحين الدكتور زي. الدكتور زي أعطانا أمس presentation على المركز Director Intellectual Property Intermediary IPI Limited at Singapore. وأعطانا فكرة كيف التكنولوجي ترانسفير والكوميرشاليزيشن اللي صارت within a very short period of time. واحدة من السلايد اللي ورناها كانت تورينا الصورة من ال60s تقريبا، وكلنا عشنا الفترة هذه إلين ال 2000. فالدراماتيك تشينج اللي صار في الإيكونومي in Singapore عمل يعني very ideal examples for other countries within the region as well as in the world to follow such knowledge-based economy. So today Dr. Z, he's going to talk about the technology commercialization and how it can be transferred from mind to market. So, please, Dr. Z.
Thank you. You hear me? You hear me? Yeah, thank you very much, Excellency Chairman, for the introduction. I'm very happy to be here again, and I am happy not because it is the last day of the conference, but I was quite encouraged this morning, and I hope the rest will come back to see such a good audience, even it is on the third day. I was told on the third day, usually if the weather is good outside, you'll probably see very few inside. So I was very happy. I know some of you are still taking your break, and I hope to share with you a topic that is very dear to my heart. All right, I speak from heart because I spent over 12 years in technology commercialization. I'm an applied scientist and engineer myself, have my own patents, and for the last 12 years, I'm very blessed to visit more than 1,000 companies and access over 2,000 to 3,000 technology from one largest organization in A-Star in Singapore. So with this experience, I thought I put together some thoughts that I have and to share with you from my experience. I'm not going to go inside of technology commercialization or a deep discussion into technology commercialization or training. But these are important topics that I do teach my staff, and I teach many people in the technology transfer offices in Singapore. And by way of background, the reason why I've put these courses together is also because when I started my journey from applied scientist to a tech transfer or IP business, I am struggling for help. And thankfully, there are two ways that I receive help, and I encourage you to consider the two ways. One way, of course, is to be involved in an organization like LES. LES, not only in your local chapter, regional chapter, and international chapter, bring you quite a lot of people that you can learn from the experience in IP and commercialization. The second thing that I do in my early days 12 years ago was to have one or two or three good licensing mentor. People like John Standerlin from Stanford Tech Transfer Office, Caroline Bruce from UBC, University of British Columbia, and even Alan Powell from UCSD San Diego and now in Cornell. I'm still in touch with them. So for many of you who are in tech transfer, good to have an organization at LES as well as to be in mentorship. Now, these are important topics. As I say, I'm not going to it, how you evaluate new technologies, okay? How do you do intelligence? We hear from Alea, it's all about due diligence. It's not about money. It's about whether your information, your technology has got a cutting edge. And that requires due diligence. So I spend a lot of time teaching staff how to look at competitive and technology intelligence, all right? Then we're not talking about patent due diligence using software tool or the essential in IP licensing or guidelines to valuation, or even the very art of negotiating a deal. Okay, these are all deep subject matter, and I'm not going to talk about it for this morning, but in the course of my insight, you will see that how it fits together. Last but not least is the strategy and tools in IP marketing. Okay, so these are deep topics, but I'm not talk to. I will pick up important points that you can glean from the experience. So by way of background, I have opportunity to start the technology transfer office in one of the largest research organizations in Singapore called Agency for Science Technology Research. They have about 300,000 scientists in different areas from high tech to life science. In high tech, you have ICT, electronics, to manufacturing, to data storage, to semiconductor industry, chemical, and so forth. So these are research work done, and I have to assess their technology with a team of people. And of course, in life science, I work with my counterpart who are very familiar from stem cell all the way to bioprocessing, to nanotechnology and biotechnology. So it's with this background I share with you the experience in technology commercialization. So this gives you a few of the various research institutes. I will not go into it because the presentation material will be made available tomorrow on the website as I had. So we have a lot of thought leadership in the scientific community, some from MIT, some from UCSD, and so forth. So they came to build up research capacity in Singapore. Because I explained to you yesterday, Singapore transformed its economy from labor to a knowledge economy. I have the opportunity to be involved in the startup of commercialization in Exploit Technologies, the tech transfer office of A-Star. We started with 23 people. Before I left them 2 years ago, there were 80 people. So we started in areas of IP management. We sought out how to manage disclosure. What are the formats of disclosure that is sufficient for us to determine the form of protection? I started a team that does competitive intelligence, 9 people. They have to answer yes and no to whether you file a disclosure, because it's a very expensive business, especially if you file in many countries. I started a team that do out-licensing, developing term sheet, developing valuations, and developing the other ways to follow up after the agreement is signed. Now, in A-Star, Exploit Technologies, we have internal funding of 50 million to bridge the gap of commercialization. So I have to work with a team to manage which project can go on for proof of concept, proof of value, and so forth. I will cite example later. Each could be a few $100,000 to $1 million US, and the largest that we did is what we call flagship project, which I handled one project before, US 8.5 million. Of course, I deal with startup company. That's not my direct area, but you work with people who help startup company and giving them a license and equity in lieu of licensing. And I started to look at in-licensing as well to complement our portfolio. So this is a brief funnel that many of you are familiar, disclosure coming from your left, and it will be sieved through, and then we will find opportunity to either incubate it as a technology if there's no business yet, or to a startup company if there's a business around it. Now, I won't go into venture disclosure, you are familiar. One of the aspects that I have to deal with is the decision to file or not to file. That is a very difficult question. And I'm very conscious of the audience here. There are applied scientists, researchers producing this. The technology transfer office here who have to decide for you. So it's a very difficult challenge. And these are examples, and I will try to share some examples here. Of course, there are well-written documents. Don't spend money until you have thoroughly evaluated the market potential of your disclosure. All right, so this is a very important guiding point. My experience has been dealing from your left-hand side, nanotechnology, to glass inspection technology, to thin film barrier substrates on your right-hand side, to mirror surface machining, or even nanotechnology on your right-hand side, or even to what we call technology that makes worms eat certain kind of chemical. And when they spill out their seal, the seal has got colors under UV light. This is very interesting. Under ultraviolet, they have different color. So I have to manage the disclosure. Do I file them or do I do not file them? If I file them, what do I do with them? And how do I get some returns or some economic benefit? So these are very important subjects, and I will discuss it along the way as I highlight the rest. You have few ways or two ways really to look at the disclosure. You can look at it as counting numbers 1 to 10. You can rate a technology 1 to 10. People do that. I prefer to write down statements of the disclosure. And I develop simple tools to evaluate technologies, the market, the development status, as well as the inventor. This is very interesting. We don't share this to the inventor. It is kept inside ourselves because different type of inventor have different style. So we need to manage that. With that, you can create a simple two axis. On your vertical axis is what I call market attractiveness. So you look at technology and you look at market, you can rate them as low, medium, high. On your x-axis, you can look at readiness. All right? You can look at development and inventor. Mind you, inventor play a very, very important part in readiness of the technology. So they are sort of put in some form of rating. And with that, you can put all your disclosure and rank them for strategic marketing or commercialization. I have 3,000 technologies, so I can't do every 3,000. So you must plan. Every year we plan how to do that. So this is a simple tool that you can use to evaluate. With that, you can have strategy. Those that are strategy, those that are on your corner, these must go because they are good and they are ready. Those that are in the lower bound, we cut down patent costs. Those in the middle, and this is where my staff like to be in the middle. I can't decide, sir. Nope, you have to force them to think up or think down. Nobody wants to be in the no man's land. And that is where due diligence, intelligence is important to help you move up or move down. Of course, it is not just to look at disclosure that comes to you. We also have to help research scientists look at what are new areas. So new areas you can do from tech scan, technology scan, to R&D and commercialization. You can look using patent software to see who are working in this area. How do you want to differentiate yourself from this area? And you can look who are citing who, so that you can establish a good position, a competitive position, why you are different in your disclosure, so that you can help your tech transfer office. I was involved in a tech scan project to decide what is after Wi-Fi, what is after Bluetooth, or what is after UWB, ultra wide bandwidth. So I spent quite a number of months to look at what is in the new technology. And we bet on milliwave technology, which is very high data transfer. Imagine today your iPhone to your TV, you can just pass across high data rate. You can watch your TV on your iPhone or on your TV as well, your program on both sides, because there's a high data rate transfer. So I decided to do intelligence in this area and put together a proposal of 8.5 million, getting in 35 people to look at the chipset development. And I'm happy to tell you that we come up with 18 patents in this area, and there are a lot of interest coming to license this because Intel say in 2014 there will be wireless docking. But 7 years ago, Intel never said that, so it was trying to bet what people will bet. But Intel say in 2014 there will be wireless docking, no more docking station, all will be wireless, high data rate. So we are building this asset so they can be licensed, and the scientists are keen to spin off a company. So this is a technology that is worth looking for in the years to come. So that is a scan of the market, and then to put money into it to find the right people. From RF, baseband, to digital signal processing, to antenna, you got to find the people. So I was a project advisor, started off the project before I left them to start a new company. Of course, in my years of experience in exploit, I deal with multinational, a lot of companies. And interestingly, there will be different form of collaboration. So when you deal with collaboration, you need to treat background IP and foreground IP. Okay? There's no fixed rule, but I want to teach my staff to be thinking staff. Not Z say this, do this. No. What is your collaborator? Assess their background and assess what foreground comes out. So once you assess the background, the foreground, then you can put up a good collaboration with your industry partners. And how do you treat the background and the foreground IP? I'm not going to the detail, but these are subjects that can have to be discussed deep, and your tech transfer office can help you as well. So these are general perspective from industry. Company wants to pay for the collaboration. They want to own the IP, foreground, background. Company does not desire the IP to reach in the hands of competitor. Company desire to maximize the IP. Company wants warranty, indemnity. And company wants a right to be able to do future improvement and so forth and so forth. So this has been an experience talking with big companies, P&G, Pfizer, the small companies and so forth. All right? I'm not giving a model answer, but you need to take each project and think the background, the foreground contribution to guide you in the deliberation and discussion. Of course, from the research organization, you always want to have a right to be able to practice your invention. You prefer always to give non-exclusive so they can benefit more people, and so forth and so forth. So these are interests, and of course, you want to make sure that your research can be used by everybody, like the gene slicing technology from Stanford, so that you can grow. So yes, both sides has got their demand and so forth. So the tech transfer, you play a very important job to be able to balance this for the good of the scientists and the industry. So I respect the tech transfer office. It is a very difficult job, but I assure you, you're doing a good job. Of course, there are different ways to look at treatment of models. It is good practice to distinguish between the type of background and foreground IP in collaborations so that you know how to negotiate, able to look at design IP as well as process IP. All right? You should be able, patent is a very expensive business, so you need to know how to look at the filing costs and so forth. There's always a discussion of joint IP ownership, so the legal always tell me, don't go into joint IP. It is a nightmare, all right? There are times it's good, there are times that's no good. So understand the background, the foreground IP to help you build the construct of your joint IP and so forth. I think it's important to differentiate between ownership and right of use. Everybody wants ownership. I think more importantly to understand the right of use, because ownership comes with liability. Ownership, you have to pay money to maintain your patent portfolio. I make decision for one patent in 10 countries, which cost me $250,000. Okay? And it's no surprise. So really, it's expensive when you talk about patent costs. Quickly, a few more slides. The overview of IP marketing. This is also a subject of deeper discussion. So I've gone through all the methods, from writing a technology brochure, to websites, to cold calling, to company visit, to roundtables, to forums, and so forth and so forth. So there are different tools to help you. And whether there's a right tool, I do not know. But you have to explore depending on the technology type. And of course, there are other platforms that you can use, whether it be IP auction, financial exchange, we heard it yesterday, or the intermediaries and open innovation players and so forth and so forth. All right? So these are additional tools to help you bring from mind to market. So I conclude with 2 or 3 examples on commercialization. So I mentioned to you about this fingerprinting technology. This is an innovation, really, because the scientists were trying to lay very simple magnets, nano-magnets, for hard disk industry. They want to put very fine magnets, and they want to read it consistently. They spent 2 years trying to lay consistent magnet. It's just difficult. They say, hey, if we cannot make consistent magnet, why don't we make it as a counterfeit technology? Indeed, they make a counterfeit technology from this. And the company spin off, and then they license. I did the licensing deal with them, and within 2 years, they were bought over by a big Indian company called Billcare for 20 million Singapore dollar, maybe about 60 million US dollar. So this is for drugs packaging. so that you ensure that it is the right counterfeit or drugs that you have. This is a very interesting story. When I have to decide to file or not to file, each filing in 10 countries is 250,000, multiplied by 3, that will cost me close to US 600,000. It's very heavy for me. This is government money to file or not to file. I study with my colleagues the patent claims right through, and there was a big competitor called Vitex, V-I-T-E-X. If you look at it, that's a competitor. We read their patent, we read our patent claim, we read and read and read. We decided we may have a chance, and we filed it. A few years later, they formed a spin-off company called Terrier Barrier. Applied Material Venture invest $2 million in a company. And this is a very good material. When Applied Venture or Applied Material looks at invest in a company, do you know who they get to assess the technology? They get the CEO or the CTO of Vitex to look at our portfolio. You know, a competitor to look at their technology. And thankfully, it was good. So the company